Okay, this is the second half of the of chapters 14. So we have talked about what demand curves are like or demand lines are like in the first part um, for different market structures. And here, the first task that we have to solve here is to figure out how many products to produce for each firm. So in order to do that, we need to take a close look at the marginal revenue, and that is by application of these core principles. The first is marginal principle, should I sell additional unit? And the second is cost benefit principle, which means we should consider both sides, the benefit and cost sides of selling this additional unit. Just to remind you, marginal revenue means the addition to total revenue you get from selling one more unit. So here, in order to find marginal revenue, we need to take 3 steps. The first one is to calculate your total revenue. The second one is to calculate your marginal revenue. The third one is to plot the marginal revenue for better visualization. So here is the question. We have the price from 24,000 to 23 to 22 to 21 in response to different quantities. And then we are to fill in those empty blanks of total revenue and marginal revenue. So total revenue is pretty straightforward. So we just use the price multiplied by its corresponding quantity. So we do 24,000 by 1, 23 by 2, 22 by 3, 21 by 4, and we will work out all those revenue for each level of production. And then by taking the difference between those total revenues, we're able to calculate the marginal revenue for each additional unit that we produce. Therefore, marginal revenue is the most accurate reflection of the revenue. Okay. How did we get that? So here, when you produce the first unit, your total revenue is 24. After selling or producing the second unit, your total revenue increases to $46,000. So it is to calculate the marginal revenue is actually a before and after, right? So here for the second product itself, its revenue is 46 minus 22 because before producing this second unit, our revenue was 24 already. And after selling this second unit, it increases to 46. So the difference is the marginal revenue of the second one. So for the same logic, when quantity equals to 0, when we didn't sell anything, our total revenue is 0. And after selling the first unit, our total revenue increased to 24. So 24,000 is the marginal revenue of the first product. So here we just follow that through so we can calculate the marginal revenue for each case. All right, so that's the first part. How did we calculate the marginal revenue? And then we point each level of price per each quantity and marginal revenue per each quantity, and we connect those. So the price quantity relationship is either supply or demand, and here it is a negative relationship, so that's demand. And the second one, the marginal revenue line is below the demand curve. This is a general conclusion. The only exception is when demand curve is totally horizontal in corresponding to perfectly elastic consumers. In that case, marginal revenue and demand, they are the same horizontal line. So that's the only exception. As long as there is a little level of inelasticity, namely slope, marginal revenue will be beneath the demand curve. So then what do we learn from this? How can we utilize this to make informed decision on how many units we should produce or sell? Well, we need to do a trade-off, and the constant core theme of economics is to trade off. So if you lower your price, you sell one more unit, but you won't make as much money from selling each unit you sell. Why is that? The first one, because there are two effects of opposite direction. The first effect is your intuitive effect. By selling this, we collect the money, right? By selling this product, we collect the money back. So that is what we call the output effect. You gain revenue from selling a larger quantity of items. So here, selling this extra unit of output boosts revenue by an amount equal to the price of that item. So you're selling, so here, when you're selling the second one, the price is $23,000, right? So then the output effect is by selling the second one, you get $23,000. But you see, the marginal revenue actually differs from that. Why is that? Because there is another effect, which is called the discount effect. You lose revenue when you cut the price a little bit. And why do we cut the price? We are sellers. We don't want to cut the price, right? Well, as you sell this extra item, you lower your price a little bit. That's because here, as we say, because of the law of demand, right? The more product you sell, then there is less and less hunger or worry or concern for hunger from the consumer side. And then they are willing to pay less for it. They're not setting a long queue in front of your store anymore. So, right? They can lay back, and that kind of laybackness means when you sell it, when you alleviate their scarcity, then it actually runs to your disadvantage because that lowers the price. So discount effect is delta P by Q, and that is the price cut you have to offer multiplied by the quantity subject to that price cut. So let's look at the example. So here, say we're looking at the marginal revenue of the third product. So the output effect is what you gain revenue from selling a large quantity of items. And here by selling 3, right? The price is lower down from 24,000 to 22,000 when you're now selling 3. And by selling the third item, you collect this price, which is $22,000. And then by selling 3 from 1, from 2, right? You alleviate the scarcity by 2 units. So you're low here by selling each additional unit, we are lowering the price by 1,000. So here it's 1 and 2 before 3. So you have lowered the price by 1,000 to sell that third car. This means car 1 and car 2 are sold at a $1,000 discount. Okay. All right. So by, say, originally you were at 2 cars and the market price was 23,000, and by selling the third car, there are more cars available, right? So the price drops by $1,000, and that $1,000 was applied to the previous 2 units. That's why the marginal revenue is 22,000 minus the discount, which is 1,000 for each car before selling your car in order to sell the third car. So the marginal revenue for the third one is 22 minus 2,000, which is 20,000. But this is just a general idea to show you why the marginal revenue is lower than the demand curve itself. Okay, so just to remind you, your firm's demand curve is downward sloping because you're facing consumers, right? And to consumers, there is a negative relationship between price and quantity. And the second one, your marginal revenue curve lies behind or beneath your firm's demand curve. And third one, your marginal revenue curve declines more sharply than your firm's demand curve because of the existence of the discount effect. Okay, and this also explains why when the demand curve is flat, there is no discount effect. Intuitively, that is because when it is totally flat, horizontal, right? Consumers are perfectly elastic and the firm's a price taker. You have no right to set the price. So no matter how much you sell, there are already numerous sellers in the market. The more product you sell, it doesn't alleviate any scarcity because the scarcity is non-existent. So that's basically the idea. Now, the third one, the rational rule for sellers. So what quantity should you produce and what price should you charge? Step one is we find the quantity that we should produce as a firm, which is to sell until marginal revenue equal to marginal cost. This is again the marginal rule, the rational rule for sellers, which is to sell one more unit if its marginal revenue is greater than or equal to marginal cost. What does that mean? You sell this one more product, it costs you $100, but the revenue is $200, right? So that's when marginal revenue is greater than marginal cost. Then you want to keep selling, right? After this unit, try another one. And because of increasing marginal cost, as you are producing more and more, it's like doing push-ups, right? It's getting harder and harder. It's getting costlier and costlier. So the cost increase eventually will catch up to the marginal revenue. So that will tell you where you should stop your production, stop expanding your production. Set your price on the demand curve, not the marginal revenue curve, because you are producing this much and then bring this to the market to sell to the consumers, right? So we are not setting the price directly. Instead, we are utilizing our output so that consumers respond to that with a socially consensible price. Okay, so that's how it is done. So here, how do we do that? We have a marginal cost in this case. We have a marginal revenue behind the demand. So those are the setup. And the first step is to figure out how much you should produce. That's marginal revenue equals to marginal cost. So we have this, 3 units. And you sell 3 units to the market. And demand is the market. How market responds to 3 units. And there is a market price, 22. Right? And that price, when set, is universal. So $22,000 applies to car 1, car 2, car 3 when you sell 3 cars total. So in that case, how do we figure out this? Here we have all those different costs. We have all those total revenue, right? And let's look at those numbers. Where do we get the highest profit? Well, the highest profit is found by marginal revenue equals to marginal cost. Okay. So in this case, here this question has a little special case in here. It's equals the same. But in this case, what is happening is you have marginal revenue equals to marginal cost, and you find the correct number, a quantity to produce, right? And this quantity corresponds to a price level. So that's how you determine that's how we do the entire process of finding the price that you need to charge after finding the quantity that we need to produce. What we can, as firms, what we can decide on is always output, right? You can give order to your plants, to your workshops, how many units to produce, but you can't threaten, or order or command the consumers on what kind of price that they need to accept. Market exchange is voluntary. So that's the price formation and decision making of firms. And now let's look at some other topics. The first one is, what is the problem of market power? So market power leads to worse outcomes. For instance, scientists discover a drug that could dramatically extend the lives of people living with AIDS, but the problem is this drug is sold at $10,000 per year. that is not affordable for a lot of people. Drugs are not expensive to make, but the thing is, why does it cost so much? Because of patent by those pharmaceutical companies. A patent gives an inventor the exclusive right to be the only seller of the good they invented for a period of time. And why do we do that? Because even though each pill is not expensive to make, the research and development costs a lot. And we want to give those pharmaceutical firms incentive to keep getting new drugs, getting better drugs by doing their lab works. So that's the basic idea. But what is a patent in nature? A patent in nature is a barrier to entry, right? So it gives this seller an exclusive right, then kind of renders this seller a monopoly. And what this monopoly do is they do not produce as much as people want. They create certain scarcity so that the price can be maintained at a high level and they can make money out of it because those people are in great hunger of it. Okay, so that's the basic idea. Lesson 1, market power leads to high prices, and lesson 2, market power leads to an inefficient small quantity. Actually, lesson 2 should come before lesson 1. It is because small quantity were intentionally produced, and then there is a hunger in the market, and the consumers have to accept that high price due to the artificially made by the monopoly, artificially made scarcity. Okay. So inefficient quantity, how do we find that? Because firms' marginal cost is below the demand curve at this quantity. And imagine if it is a perfect competition case, if it is a supply and demand case that we study previously, where is the market equilibrium? Well, here this is demand. That is unchanged. But the marginal cost will be the supply. So the grain point, which is the intersection between the market supply and demand, the market supply is the red line and demand is the blue line, that is the equilibrium point. And as you see, the market output, the output by this firm itself is lower than the equilibrium point, and the price is higher than the equilibrium point. And therefore, there is a debit loss. We haven't drawn it here. It should be this triangle. Okay? But anyways, the social welfare decreases, and people are worse off. That's why you see people protesting. And lesson 3, market power yields larger economic profits, and that's why firms, they want to maintain their unique stance in the market. They want to differentiate so that they can have a large market power, and accompanied by that power is economic profit. That's what firms desire. Okay. And business with market power can survive even with inefficiently high cost. Why is that? Because their high profit sustains them. That's why you see those pharmaceutical companies, they pay very high amount of money each year for research and development, but they can still survive this. Why is that? Because they make even more revenue to cover that due to their unique or patent protected stance. Okay. So increasing competition can lead to better outcomes. For instance, this, right? Better outcome for the society or for consumers with more availability of products, the price goes down, right? So that's better for them. So here there is a human rights lawyer, the led a campaign to end patent protection of AIDS drugs. And eventually price fell to $100 per year as competitors start to supply the drug because the patent is probably rendered non-binding or probably being aborted. And therefore there are more competitors entering, copy what the incumbent firms were doing, and therefore more production leads to lower price. Okay. Most economists agree that overriding patents isn't a policy that should be used often. Why is that? Because that eventually is going to discourage firms to do innovation. It is beneficial to the society, to consumers in this one shot, but in the long run, if eventually, think about yourself, you paid $1 million as, say, Pfizer, right, to develop a drug, and you have a patent, and you thought, oh, I can make a big money, big profit out of this patent. But then after 2 years, even before you make enough revenue to cover the cost for research and development, now there is a social event, social protest, and then the patent protection was removed, and now we have all different drug companies to copy your recipe, your ingredients to produce similar drugs, and the price drops down. You can't make that money anymore, and then it dissuades you, or it could lead you to bankrupt. All right. And say in the long run, people are like, even if I took the lead to innovate, eventually I won't be able to enjoy the harvest from that innovation because I'm not protected at all. I will be easily copied by my potential competitors. Then why do I bother to do that? Why do I run the risk to put so much money in there to innovate? Right? So we need to balance between those two, between the welfare of consumers as well the incentive for the firms to proceed. Okay, so what is the public policy to restrain market power? As we see, more competitors will lead the society as a whole to be better, but may not benefit everyone in the society. For instance, producers, right, especially producers who innovated, they will not be happy. And less competition causes more market power and larger profits for incumbent firms. And business often strive to stifle competition, even though this makes society worse off. The attempt of business to get rid of competition makes the society worse off. That's what it means. So the response of the government is to regulate market through policy. The first one is to ensure that competition can thrive, to encourage competition. And the second one is to minimize the halfway ways business might exploit their market power. So there are several measures that they take. For instance, we have those policies that encourage competition, anti-collusion laws, merger laws. It is illegal attempt to monopolize and encourage international trade. So anti-collusion prevent business from agreeing not to compete. They want them to compete. They want to dissuade collaboration in that way. So because if we only have 4 firms, like we said, AT&T, Verizon, and if they eventually sign a treaty to collude to be one for all for one, that's the entire industry is occupied by their collision, right? Then they function like a monopoly, and consumers will be harmed by this monopolization. So the second one is merger. Merger is a legal attempt for several firms to combine as one, and we want to block that. And this is exactly the case of AT&T and T-Mobile's attempt to merge, to combine as one. And after if they do successfully combine as one, the new firm will be too big, will be a monopoly, and we don't want that to happen. So the third one, illegal attempt to monopolize, similar idea. And the last one is to encourage international trade. And by doing that, we allow foreigners to compete with us. So that could be a little bit counterintuitive. But here, if you don't want the firms inside your country to occupy everything, then by introducing those different brands, we kind of dilute their market power. So they have to be concerned. Like, for instance, Toyota and Honda, right? Those are typical firms that produces worldly renowned cars at affordable price with high quality. And in order to compete with them, if we open the border, right, GM and Ford, they have to consider their pricing strategy. They can't price as high as they want, and they have to also do their quality enhancement so that they don't lose their consumers to Honda and Toyota. But think about a world where we only use American-made product. We ban all those imports. Then the market will be occupied by GM, Ford, and Chrysler probably. Then what they can do is they can now lay back. Even if my car is rubbish, my car is lemon. If you want to use a car, you have no other choice. It's either me or Ford or Chrysler, right? So that gives me as a GM a great improvement, strengthening in my market power, which is to consumers and society's disadvantage. So the second one is policy to minimize the harm from exercising market power. For instance, there could be a price ceiling that can limit abuse of market power. So we know that those producers, what they want to do is by cut short, suppressing their production, pushing up the market price. And now we put a price ceiling. You shall be here no further, right? Then that limit what they can exploit from their market power. And the second one is natural monopoly, which is a market in which it is cheapest for a single business to service the market. The logic is marginal cost always decreases. You expand your output, then new entrants will always be at a cost disadvantage. For instance, local water, gas, and electric companies, they're almost all natural monopolies. And the reason for that is, even though we let one of them run by themselves, there is a cost advantage. Think about this way. We have different houses, and each of the house need one pipe, water pipe, power line, right? And we know the construction of that infrastructure is very costly, and also maintenance too, right? So if it is just one firm running its way to your community, to your complex, and then branching out all those power lines and water pipes, that saves the cost. But if we have a lot of firms to compete, and each of them have to do their own pipe system, line system, that will be very costly. That's what we mean if marginal cost is low for those incumbent firms. But if new firms enter into the market, then they have to build their own system. That will be costly, and that deters the entry of those firms. And here we have a natural monopoly. Okay, so that, and a lot of natural monopoly, they also receive subsidy and probably tax benefit from the government so that their price could be low too. So those are the general idea of the entire semester. I hope what you learned could be all serving the purpose of chapter 14 and help you to have a better understanding of the operation of business in the real world. Thank you very much.